pleased for our celebrity interview tonight. We've got Julie Larkin. Julie is a Franklin Covey, and is it sales rep, district sales rep? But you've got California covered, I guess, right?
Actually, I kind of assist in a lot of different territories. So I'm business development. Sorry. Can you all hear me okay?
Oh, yeah, yeah. You're
okay.
Good.
My speaker on my computer wasn't working so well, so I have to use this guy. So yeah,
Okay.
So business development and just involved in the sales of lots of different things to college campuses, like the course you're just doing.
Okay, good. So can you tell us a little bit more about what's involved with your position? Are you like talking to people every day? Is it all over Zoom now and phone? Do you travel around? What does that look like?
Used to travel around, so it's a little bit more this format now, and doing a lot of empathetic impact, what you're just doing, the listening, and trying to figure out what issues are happening on campus, what are the needs, what are the the hurt points, and how those can be best addressed with the content that we offer. And going to conferences, that's a large part of what we do as well, and that I very much enjoy, going to different conferences and meeting people like you, Dr. Olsen, that are working with students. And so we work with both sides. We work with the student side of things, like a course like the 7 Habits for Highly Effective College Students. And then we also work with staff and professors and different things like that. So we cover both ends.
Okay, good. You know, Julie, so you mentioned the course, the highly effective college students, right? So here at Cal Poly, and when I started teaching this course, I kind of went back to what I knew, right? So I had seen the 7 Habits back in the 90s, and I said, oh, well, that's the course I want. So we kind of brought that right in. But I've also got the impression from talking to other Franklin Covey folks that you've got the highly effective college student, which kind of looks like a more sort of a freshman entry sort of thing. And then it also seems like there's a lot of teaching of sort of the Franklin Covey leadership model, right?
Right.
Seems to be embraced by a lot of folks. And so I'm feeling a little bit like I'm the odd person, right? I'm doing something a little bit sort of different, which is not unusual for me. But maybe you can sort of tell me a little bit about like how do the clients you work with make their different decisions about, you know, what product they're going to put out in higher education?
Yeah, I think it just depends on what's in front of them. If there's a trust issue within their team, they might be very interested in speed of trust, which is one of our content pieces, just addressing how can they make things go smoother, a little quicker with that trust piece understood more in a team setting or in a group setting. So it just really depends on what their pain point is or what they want to improve on. And the 7 Habits has been such a standard for so long. It's over 25 years in practice out there, but they are timeless. They're really timeless habits that will lead to a better professional life, better personal life. So we have that in all different formats for students, for staff, for professors, and so yeah, there's a lot of different content pieces, over 25 different ones, but that one is kind of I would say a cornerstone to so much of what we do.
So for these students that are going to be, graduating and going out into the industry and the corporate world and whatnot, would they be more likely to run into a 7 Habits class or sort of one of the other, sort of more targeted versions in sort of a company that they were working with? Or
I think both. I think that this is such a good foundation. I would say to all of you, if you can learn these, not just the habits, but truly the language that surrounds it. I've heard so many stories when students graduate and they go into interviews and they'll say, gosh, I'm really focusing on my big rocks. I'm trying not to get lost in the pebbles, and just taking that language that they learned in their college course, and the person interviewing will say, oh, wow, they've been exposed to the 7 Habits already. How wonderful, So it gives them, it gives all of you a leg up, I would say, in the interviewing process once you move on. and just having that familiarity. And then when it is still one of the, we sell to all the Fortune 500 companies. Chances are when you go out into your professional career, you'll be doing something Franklin Covey, whether it be 7 Habits, Speed of Trust, project management, 5 Choices. These are names that you'll probably become familiar with.
Yeah, you see a lot of those different sort of versions. It's kind of made me curious to maybe drill down into some of that stuff at some point. So Julie, how were you first exposed to 7 Habits?
When I was hired by Franklin Covey, this was over 20 years ago, and they said the first thing you have to do is go to a 3-day or 2 or 3 day seminar. So you go into a hotel kind of conference room, and I was brand new and just didn't really even know much about the 7 Habits, and that was my first exposure. And just sitting at a table with people I didn't know, talking about the 7 Habits, doing little practice things like you all just did, but in person. So one of the first things that really impacted me when I was exposed to the 7 Habits was the listening experience, where you just had to, we're talking about that seek first, understand, then to be understood.
Right.
And we had to partner with somebody, and we had to only listen and give asking type of questions back without saying anything about ourselves, not relating it back to ourselves. And I remember how eye-opening that was. And it made me realize how much I did that as a habit. And that stops you from understanding fully first, when you're always thinking of your response. So that was one of my first exposures, and really impacted me in that aspect.
Well, I want to, speaking of asking questions and trying to understand, I want to encourage the students to go ahead and ask questions also. If you've got a question for Julie, go ahead and type it in the chat, but also remember, I'm not a good multitasker. So if you need to just wave your hand to get my attention, you can go ahead and jump in and ask those sorts of questions. So Julie, how do you apply the 7 Habits in your job? Do you have sort of an approach or a way of thinking about that?
Yes, but what I love about the 7 Habits, and especially that initial exposure, which, I thought I was going to a work seminar, how to do my job. And what I walked away with was, wow, this is how to do a successful life. And I will say that over and over and over again. And you as students, you have lives outside of your classroom, full lives. And if things aren't going well in other parts of your life, it's hard to be successful in school. It's hard to be successful in jobs. So, applying that was really important to me at first, when I realized, this is about my whole life. This is not about my job. And I will never forget sitting next to someone, I think it was one of the Coveys, because a lot of them work for the company. And this is when we used paper planners, everybody. There were these things called paper planners. And I saw that he had a name down, and we were talking about planning our days out and how to prioritize. And I said, do you mind if I ask, what's Caitlin? He said, that's my daughter. I said, oh, what? Oh, she's in your planner? He goes, absolutely. I schedule that time once a week with her, and we talk about her life and how things are going, what can I help her with? And that just really got my attention, just to know that it's a life thing. It's not a job thing. Or a school thing. It's how to do life well. And part of doing life well is having these habits in place, and they will affect all the parts of your life.
One of the things we talked about in an earlier class when we were talking about first things first, and the concept of big rocks, and focusing on what's really important. Do you have a big rocks time set aside, or that sort of weekly or daily private victory? Can you maybe just sort of share with us a little bit about what that looks like? And by the way, I have shared with my students that I do struggle with this.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah,
something you're trying to do. It's not something you ever get perfect, really.
right. I feel like I actually feel like I was better at that when I did use the big, thick paper Franklin Covey planner, just planning out my week. But what I do try to do now is plug in obviously important meetings, um, real protective of family time. I have 2 children, a really busy life, and a husband, and a lot of extracurricular things that, volunteer things and extended family things. So I try to plug, I still do plug those things out. I even plug in workouts.
Hmm.
I will put them in at a time because I find that if it's in there and it pops up on my phone, it's got to be done.
Right.
So, for me, family, exercise, just different things that we're involved with the community are important. So they are my big rocks, and they go in, and just to make sure to have that balance and make those things a priority. Otherwise, they will get lost.
Yeah.
They will.
Well, it looks like Oliver's going to break the ice with a student question here. So Oliver, thanks for doing this. Oliver, go for it.
Yeah, it's just got me thinking since I do want to get into doing. I had paper planner this past year, but it ran out in like July, and I haven't had a planner since. So I was wondering what app you use to plan out your weekly big rocks.
We use Outlook with work. I don't have a special app that I use for that, but I'm meticulous about my planning though. And I think people kind of giggle if they see something come up, the bubble that floats up in my phone. Like, you put that in your phone? Like, yeah, because if it pops up at me, it happens. So I don't know Oliver, have you tried any different apps outside? You said paper, but have you ever tried it?
Yeah, I've been trying to use this Google Calendar for like the past couple of weeks, but it's kind of, I don't know, it's just sort of a hassle to put everything in, and I don't know, it's sort of weird. It's a weird format. So I think I want something that I can put in on my computer because it's a
Yeah,
lot easier to work on a computer. Just put it all on the computer and then it'll pop up on my phone throughout the week.
yeah.
So
For us professional, we use Outlook, and what I like to do though is I don't necessarily want all of my personal calendar to show up to all my work associates. So what I'll do is, if I'm invited, let's say Dr. Olsen invited me to this meeting, I will send an email to my Gmail so that it autofills on my personal calendar. So that way I can keep them together, but also a little bit of separation. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, we're all sort of struggling to find that perfect app that does everything for us, and it's hard sometimes. Thanks for that question,
Yeah.
Oliver. Yeah, so is there a favorite habit that you've sort of gravitated to over the years, Julie?
Yes, I think it's the one. I was kind of smirking when you brought up 5, because seek first to understand, then to be understood. And it goes back to that first experience. And, when you become mindful of something like that, unfortunately, it's going to drive you crazy when other people aren't practicing that. So, but, it made me realize that I have to stop. I run very fast. I just run at a fast speed. I'm involved in a lot of things, have a very busy life, and I love communicating with people. I really enjoy hearing people's stories and sharing stories. And the biggest thing about that habit is really stepping back in all settings, interpersonally, career-wise, and trying to understand where someone's coming from. Really, because I've seen so many scenarios where everyone just barks back a response about what they think, and you get nowhere with that. You really don't.
Right.
So just taking that time, even if it's, I've had to step back, maybe even put tools in place, like count to 3, take a breath, just so that I'm not just responding with my own ideas right away. And once you start making that a habit and pausing, it does lead to deeper communication. And I think you'll find that people, the shoulders might be tight, if you start listening and really seeking to understand first, you'll even see like a body response, like a more openness that will come both ways in a conversation.
It was interesting. I noted in the beginning of your statement there, you expressed you'll, if you know about this habit, you become frustrated with people that aren't practicing it, back, right?
Yeah.
And, I guess the advice is, well, you should go deeper into trying to understand the person, because once they understand, they'll be more open to being understood. Because that's, I guess the frustration is, they're not really listening, right?
Right.
It's part of the thing. And you said, boy, if they would just listen more. But then you could, can you have a listening standoff where the two listeners are just listening to each other to death? I don't know. Is it?
Maybe.
What is the source of the frustration, I guess, is, or what do you think that dynamic looks like?
Well, I just think that once that you're practicing that and you're mindful of it, you just so much want other people to be doing the same so that you can be understood, right? We all want to be understood.
Exactly.
Just, leaving or just in the middle of the climate we're in right now, and just politically in the world and everything, there are a lot of different opinions out there, and you're around someone who's really opinionated, and you've probably all been in the situation where you kind of turn off, like, now nothing they're going to say is going to penetrate, because I've been turned off, because all they're doing is expressing their opinions, and they're just not open to hear anything else. So I just think it leads to a much broader and open communication, and you'll learn something you might not have learned,
Right.
when you're listening and really trying to not just respond. So yeah.
Good. So I'm gonna ask our students to help me out here, in that I'm gonna set the target for like one more good question for Julie before we kind of wrap up here. So I'm gonna set out that challenge, and I'm gonna try to practice a little bit of silence here.
By maintaining like a personal calendar and a work calendar, do you think you like have better like work-life balance because it is scheduled in different areas? Or do you find that you're so focused on the work calendar, it takes away from the personal calendar?
Sienna, that's a really great question, because I'm pretty passionate about that. I just had a situation this week where I have so many work projects, and we had an out-of-town niece come that I never see, and her 2-year-old son. And all I could think of is, before they came, is, I can't do this. I have no time for this. I have too much on my plate. And I was very frustrated. But again, that bubble, because I put in Cheyenne's visit, the bubble came up, and we had a wonderful 3-day visit. And it was a reminder to me how important that is for the work-life balance, because it is so easy to get sucked into work projects or school projects and forget about the other element. So that's why everything goes in my schedule. And that is the last habit. That's, you ask, do I have a favorite? And I said number 5, but I also love sharpen the saw. And just, I've had people say, I really, let's see, how can I say this? I try real hard not to say I don't have time for that, and try to say, gosh, I have not made time for that. People say, how can you walk every day for 4 miles? And, well, because I put it in my calendar and it's going to happen. So, it's finding that time, carving it out, being diligent about it, keeping it a sacred thing so that you have that balance. Because mentally, you won't be great for school if you don't have that balance. You won't be great for work if you don't have that balance. So.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. That really helps. I feel like it's like hard as like a student, like you have like, you want to do all these things with your friends, but it's like the reality is you can't do everything. So you have to prioritize. So yeah,
Right.
Thank you.
Right.
Looks like Lewis has a question. Lewis, you want to pop on?
Hey, yeah, I was just wondering, just because at work I've noticed there's kind of a weird, like awkward pause sometimes during meetings. So I was wondering if you noticed any differences in regards to active listening during a virtual work environment.
Yeah, that's hard with the virtual, right? I think that, well, I'm on a sales team, so we don't lack conversation much, and that isn't something. But I just think being inquisitive in a situation like that, Lewis, and just thinking of something that you could break the ice with, even if it's something non-work related that will make everyone breathe and laugh a little bit. I love it when people do that on my team, So I don't know if that answers the question exactly, but I just think being curious and not afraid to throw something out there, to be curious and change the trajectory of a conversation or bring a little lightheartedness to something.
Yeah, I think, the being curious, I also try to be a noticer, right? So if you notice something and call attention to it, I think people appreciate that, right? It shows you're paying attention. So Julie, this has been great. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up. And one of the ways we wrap things up is ask you, if you had any piece of wisdom or advice to give these students kind of new to the 7 Habits, just starting out on their journey, what would that advice be?
I would go back to Sienna's question and comment about keeping a healthy balance. With the year that we've been in, sitting behind these screens, and for me personally, it was walking on the beach. I live in Huntington Beach, and that was life to me, just to get out the door, get away from this for a while, and just keeping that priority and keeping the balance in check. It's so important for mental health, for relationships, and all of it. So it may sound cheesy and a little postcardy, but it's important. So give yourselves time to balance out your lives.
Yeah. All right. Great advice. Julie, thank you so much for visiting with us today. So one of the ways we've now traditionally ended these little Zoom interviews is I'm going to ask everybody to pop on your cameras and go ahead and give Julie a little thank you Zoom wave. All right. So there you go. Thank you, Julie. We'll see you later. This is your escape opportunity. So we'll see you.
Thank you so much, guys. Study hard.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.